Well, welcome everybody to season 2 of Vantage Point. I'm Chester Eldon, one of your hosts with my good friend Adrian Gostick. Adrian, wave to the crowd. Today, we're going to deal with the subject of quiet quitting, obviously sponsored by our good friends at Vantage Circle. And the question is, what is quiet quitting? Is it no more than doing the minimum amount of work for your job? In short, when people are quiet quitting, are they disengaged? As I've mentioned, with me today is my dear friend and co-author Adrian Gostick, who I am betting is ridiculously engaged to be here today. Adrian?
Today I am engaged, Jess. Yeah. And I'm thrilled to be here with our panelists and to discuss this idea of quiet quitting, and especially what HR and line leaders can do to get people engaged in these tough times. 3 years now, we've been dragging out this, the effects of the pandemic and economic impacts, et cetera. And a lot of people are giving, unfortunately, just the minimal amount, as Chester said. So we've got three amazing panelists with us today. Let me introduce you to everybody. We have Seema Bansali, who is Vice President of Employee Experience and Inclusion at Henry Schein, which is a healthcare company with 22,000 employees. She'll tell us more about the organization. She's an expert on corporate culture and a member of the Office of the CEO for this Fortune 500 company. We have Melissa Anderson, who is Global Head of Wellbeing and Recognition at FIS, which is a financial services company with 70,000 employees. And her passion is to help organizations and leaders focus on mental health and resilience. We also have Partha Niag, who's the founder, CEO, and driving force behind Vantage Circle, which is a global leader in the employee recognition and engagement space. So welcome, everyone, and we're thrilled to have you here. We're going to start with Seema. First off, we got people joining us today that may be familiar with quiet quitting or may be still wondering what this is. Help us understand a little bit what this term is and what it means to you and your organization.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me, and I'm grateful to be on with such a talented group of people. For me, quiet quitting, when you think about it, is when you've had a rough day and you come home, you're exhausted, you look at the house and you think, I really should straighten that up. I really should go work out. I really should go do these things that make me feel good, but I'm not going to. I'm going to make sure that everyone in the house is safe. Okay, no, nothing's on fire, and I'm done. And I go to bed and I'm done for the day. Quiet quitting is that in the professional space for a really long period of time, right? It is almost sort of this exhausted kind of I'm survival technique, if you will. And I think a lot of it has to do, Adrian, with what you said about the pandemic, right? We've really gone through a lot. We still have some post-traumatic stress from a lot of the change that happens. It's a tremendous amount of change in a short period of time. And so you have people reeling from that. And trust overall is down as a society. Business, the Edelman Trust Survey at least tells us that business is still trusted, but overall people are not trusting. So they have gone into a really specific mode of, I'm going to do what I need to do to get by, and I'm not going to do the bells and whistles and the extras because I don't have it. I don't have it to give. And I think it's happening at all layers in the organization, from your senior leadership down to all different types of people. People who are typically motivated, people who may not be, all different types of achievers. I think it impacts everyone.
Wonderful definitions there. And I love that idea of bringing it to, in our home lives, we've all experienced that, right? Melissa, what would you add? What are you seeing with quiet quitting in your organization?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I think is driving it is two things, right? I think we've seen, when you think about like employee engagement, we really saw, a lot of growth in that area, for a good decade. And then we hit 2020, which we kind of peaked, on engagement. And then we started to see a decline. So when you look at employee engagement declining, and then you also see well-being declining for a lot of people. And so I think it's a coping mechanism, as Seema said, for many people. And really they're preserving some of that extra discretionary effort that they would normally put in at work in the past. And they're pulling back on that because they're trying to preserve their own mental health and seeing that that's a necessary mechanism for them to be able to cope and stay as healthy as they can for themselves and their families.
Partha, what are you seeing? Partha is joining us today from Bangalore, India, where it is almost midnight or after midnight now. And we appreciate you joining us. What are you seeing globally? Is this an issue that we're seeing around the world?
Yeah, I think I'll add on to what Seema mentioned, right? The exhaustion is there, and it's not maybe all because of the company itself. Okay, it might be a lot of events happening around us, which we had never imagined. COVID was one thing that we never planned or never thought about it. Then the war going on in Europe, you think that war is gone. I mean, those were like 20 years back. Now suddenly that is there. So external, the kind of political, certain kind of powers which are coming into place, which you never expected maybe 10 years back. I think that the exhaustion is also happening not just because of the company. It's also the surrounding what is happening across the world. It's like some kind of, okay, this is too much. I don't know what's going to happen kind of thing. Let's just do my job, get my food, enjoy my holidays. That's it. I think that's what is affecting us.
It's really interesting to me as I'm going around, when most people think of quiet quitting, they sort of blame the employee that you're being lazy, right? I really appreciate the fact you're saying, there's a lot going on. Quiet quitting isn't because I'm lazy. It's just because I'm exhausted. Seema, I so appreciate it. I come home, the house isn't on fire. I'm good. That's just sort of the bare minimum, right? My niece's child had a great T-shirt at a little reunion we had, and it said, "I kind of want to get up and go to run, and I kind of want to stay in bed." It's we have those choices, right? Well, Melissa, let's go over to you with FIS, and what have you tried at FIS to stem that disengagement? What have you found that's worked and what hasn't?
Yeah, so there's been quite a few things that we have been doing. So, one of the things that we have done is we've pivoted from kind of that once a year engagement survey action planning cycle that happens afterwards. And we've pivoted to an always on mechanism so that we can hear from employees at all the time, because we know that, historically, when you take that engagement survey, that is one day in time. That is not necessarily representative of how an employee feels the other 364 days out of the year. So that is one thing that we have done. Whether or not that's going to work or not, we're still early days. This is something that we just recently implemented, but I think that doing that and having that always on and always having that conversation going is one thing that we're hoping we're that's going to really help us. I would say another, a couple other things that we're doing is, we're working in a hybrid work environment, and we know that, connection and, and having, even more transparency with leadership is really important to employees. So we're being much more visible, much more available for those sorts of interactions, especially during times of so much change that we're experiencing in our organization. So we're really trying to encourage, we recognize that we are in a hybrid environment, but we are trying to encourage as much, face-to-face connection time as possible where it's meaningful, so that we can increase that trust that employees have with leadership, and that they're able to ask those questions that are on their hearts and minds that maybe they were afraid to ask in the past. But, by being more present and being more vulnerable as leaders, that hopefully that will help with our engagement as well. As another thing that we're doing is there's a lot of different listening channels that are available to us to be able to hear from a wide variety of employees, even outside of these formal surveys and focus groups. So we're really trying to lean in and take what we can from those listening channels and really try to implement some good plans forward. So we're still early days on some of this work. So whether, we know that, as with anything, some of it will work and some of it won't. And, I think the most important thing is that we pivot and we adapt quickly, just as we expect our employees to do too.
We hear so much of that now. It's so important to listen. It's such a great thing you're doing there, keeping it open all the time. I'm going to ask you your opinion once a year, and that's going to represent the other 364 days. Mm-hmm. So what a great practice. Partha, you've got such a great overview because you have so many clients in the engagement space and the recognition space. Are there some best practices that you're seeing that are kind of coming along that could be helpful to stem this disengagement wave that we're seeing?
Sure. So, but just to add on to that, when we started this, I don't come from an HR background. So, the whole annual survey, a point of time survey, that it has survived so many years is like surprise to me. You do it before the appraisal, you get good scores. You do it after the appraisal, you get bad scores. So, it's surprising, sometimes. I mean, 10 years down the line, we will be saying, why did we do this thing, annual survey? It has its benefits. No, so I see one is, of course, the whole digitization around the engagement space. Okay, what we saw was many people getting interested and wanting to do something around it, but there were the frameworks were not available. Okay, so people didn't know where to start from. Standard practices like comp and benefits, organizational design, there are enough expertise within the companies, or external consultants are there to help you. But I saw that there's not enough expertise or frameworks to develop engagement programs. Okay, so it's like a hit and miss which was happening. We are trying to contribute there something, but a lot needs to be done there. Secondly, they're trying to what we see also is a connecting to the business metrics. I mean, while it was always a goal to connect all this engagement to business metrics there, but I see a serious effort from companies to see how do we measure these engagement stuff, okay, and where can it end up, how can it help us. So I see those two trends. So because when we see 3 years back, people were saying, okay, let's have these things, features on the product. Now they're saying, okay, the analytics is more important for them. The insights are becoming more important. So those are trends which we are seeing.
It is interesting, isn't it, that data is becoming such an important part of every part of business, because you can gather that data, you can interpret that data, you can have it in real time, as you have in Melissa's organization. Seema, talk a little bit about what you're doing there at Henry Schein. And I have to say, I love the sign behind your head. Does gratitude go a long way to stem disengagement? I mean, I have to ask.
Yeah,
I think you're sucking up to the host there, Seema. Yeah, having that behind you.
It's a good question though, because what I was going to say, number one, what we're doing is focusing on a culture of wellness. And you really can't focus on a culture of wellness without talking about gratitude. You cannot. So I do think it's a really important part of this. Look, if you're exhausted and you're spent, engagement is actually a really good thing, like running or meditating. But if you're that exhausted, you're not getting there, I have to do other things to get you to the point where we can take advantage of what Partha is talking about, right? So I need to get you there. Part of that is focusing on wellness. So at Henry Schein, we've really started to drive that culture of wellness. Our CEO talks very openly. Yesterday, he just talked openly about anxiety and burnout with a number of our team members joining the call. And then we also have new workplace norms in effect, where we told leaders, hey, watch how many calls you're having. Make sure your team's blocking off time for lunch and creativity and some of these other pieces that are really going to start to restore people. So we have that. And then we also have something that is truly unique to Henry Schein, or at least I think it is, right? Is this focus on purpose. And really kudos to our CEO, Stan Bergman, for driving this within the organization. People really feel a sense of purpose at the organization, their own personal purpose with what they're doing, and also the company's mission and purpose for the customers, but also for society. We do a tremendous amount of work through our foundation. And so I think that helps to kind of alleviate this sense of, from quiet quitting, this sense of just sort of exhaustedness, because when you quiet quit on yourself too. Right. But people need purpose. They need purpose to move forward. So, and I'll tell you one really specific thing our CEO does is when he's talking to him, I can't tell you how many emails I've seen him send out that say, thank you for all you do for Team Schein. And he means it. Every single one, no matter who you are, he will say that to you, and he truly means it. And that makes a difference to folks.
That's great.
So you're saying gratitude actually has an impact on quiet quitting. Yeah.
Yeah,
good. We love that coming full circle there. Chester and I did a podcast interview this morning with the head of wellness for a company called BAM, which is a construction company, and they've started putting well-being rooms into each of their facilities. It just has kind of serenity in there. And these are all engineers, mostly male. And she says it's amazing how much they've been embraced. So some of the times we kind of think, oh, my people won't like that. And yet wow, it's amazing how they've been embraced, right? So tell us a little bit. Let's start with Partha on this one. What causes disengagement? I mean, what are organizations doing? What are leaders doing, and especially HR? What can we do that may be causing disengagement in our people? And and how do we stem that? So Partha, kick us off with that.
Yes, let me just flip this around and like, what can create engagement? Like, how do you create this engagement? If I just flip that around, the question. See, I see this in three levels. One is the basic hygiene factors, right? Your salaries, your company policies, your the processes, security environment, those kind of things. It's very hygiene, but it's surprising to see many times, people not adapting as the changing culture. 2 years back you had to think about different things. Today you have to think about some other new things which are happening. So the basic hygiene, benchmarking against the best in the industry, depending on the demographics, depending on the industry which you are in, I think that should be a continuous exercise. The next level I feel is about, how do you create this whole culture of recognition, engagement, well-being. This is an area where I feel HR is a very, very important role. The problem in this is that it's it takes time. The impact is not seen overnight. Okay, it takes time. It's important, not urgent. Okay, so it always goes to the back burner kind of thing. But it's if you don't put focus into it, it's a slow decay. Slowly it will keep on happening there. So it's very important for HR to take that kind of management buy-in, and what Seema was saying about the CEO taking taking the lead in that. That's important. Along with that, having the right kind of metrics. You introduce a recognition program, for example. Is it, does it reduce my attrition? That's a good metric to have, but maybe that's the metric for the year 3. Okay, year 1, your metric should be, does my engagement, what Melissa was saying, the pulse surveys which are happening, does the engagement score increases there? Okay, so the metrics has to evolve as you mature there. And the third, of course, at the third level, I think it's about the purpose, creating the sense of purpose and impact. Seema already mentioned about the purpose thing. Nothing like that if you can create that sense of purpose beyond your work. But in some industries it's slightly difficult. It's easy to say about purpose. I mean, I was thinking about it and I said, like, what does a home cleaning services company, how do they create a purpose? you
Right.
know it's almost impossible to spin it around to create a purpose there. Okay, but an impact, that's why I use the word impact. The impact can still be there. You can maybe the local employment you're generating, okay, which is there. All those things are impact. So I think this purpose, impact, that is also important. So I think I see this in the 3 levels where HR can play a very important role.
And I like that pyramid approach. And actually, I'm going to be speaking Monday to a cleaning company with 10,000 employees. So yeah, this is kind of top of mind. And do they feel like they have a purpose? Yeah, they feel like they do. But it's a little harder there than maybe working, Melissa, at a financial services company, which you're helping people with their financial future. So tell us what you found with engagement. Then I like the way Partha is flipping this. What are you finding with engagement? What are the foundational elements, and then what have you added to help people be more engaged at FIS?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I hear the word purpose, I think about a career change that I made a couple of years ago. I kind of came to this point in my career where I wanted to contribute to my organization in a different capacity, which is why I moved in and really got the well-being function off the ground. And here we are almost a year and a half later, and we've now recently moved recognition under well-being as well, because there's so much connection there, right? We know, I mean, even when I think about my own personal experiences, what a boost I get when I get a thank you email. It can be short and sweet. Someone that just takes 30 seconds or 2 minutes to write an email and thank you for something specific that you did. The boost that I get from that, I can walk through Kohl's for the next week after something like that, and so we know, that, and it also feels good to be the giver. It feels good to be able to make someone else smile and to show gratitude for the work that they're doing each and every day. So there's so much benefit for both people who participate in that. So, we really have, we launched our recognition platform a couple years ago. So Partha, what you were talking about really hit the nail on the head. It takes time to really start embedding that into our culture. We want to be an organization that recognizes and that takes the time to thank employees and even our customers for all that they do for us each and every day. So, at FIS, we recently just completed a client appreciation week where we spent an entire week really spending time to learn about why it's important and to take the time to thank our colleagues, to thank our clients. And we really saw, a big boost out of our colleagues as a result of that work. It was a great campaign. And I hope that's something that we continue to do.
I love how, you're taking this idea of bringing, recognition into the wellness space, and not just recognition of, top, bottom, as we've seen, but each other, our clients, our suppliers, our vendors, et cetera, our partners out there. Love that. And Seema, tell us a little bit, first off, about Henry Schein. A lot of people don't know the organization. So tell us what you do, and then what you would add to this engagement discussion that you found at Henry Schein that is important.
Yeah, so Henry Schein is a solutions provider in the healthcare space. So almost anything you can see in a doctor's office or a dentist's office, you will see Henry Schein there. And I guarantee you, next time you all go to one of those spaces, you're going to look. Look for the Henry Schein logo. I couldn't stop myself when I started here at the organization. So that's what we do. Obviously, we also distribute PPE. So our team really spent a lot of time during COVID. We spent time with the government. Our team on the ground was still working in person every day in our distribution centers, and they were incredible. So that's kind of who we are. And so wellness actually has a really special part of our team, because we also, the purpose is a bit easier to say, hey, you, especially during the pandemic, like this team really had a purpose. You were providing protective equipment to physicians and dentists all across the globe. I mean, that's really meaningful. But to your point on engagement, look, I think there's lots of things you can do, but engagement, in my mind, it has to be a little bit fun. There's got to be some levity to it. And so one of the things we're really looking to do this year is gamify our engagement. Add a little element of competition. We have sales team members on there. They love to compete, and I love to see it. Add a little competition. We do small things like a bake-off. We just hosted a bake-off at our corporate center yesterday, and you won't believe how many people participated and enjoyed it and were together. And so that kind of thing, it brings people to a different level, right? And they're starting to feel good. They're connecting with one another. These are the things we're trying to encourage for our team. And so as we have a little bit more fun and levity with engagement, we went through some serious times. That wasn't possible for us as a healthcare company during the pandemic. The team really, really nose to grind. So they did a lot of work. Now we have the opportunity to create a little bit of light. And I think in engagement, that really plays a huge role and makes a difference to people.
I love that you're talking about fun too. I'm curious what the other panelists think of this idea of bring and the link and fun and engagement, because Melissa, you're dealing with, high finance here. And we did some work from KPMG a while back, Chester and I, and it was interesting. One of the big things that all these, highly analytical people said, we need more fun around here. Is that something that's kind of trickled into the FIS culture as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think that's a really important part of our culture is to bring that fun, because, the work that we do is intense. We have a responsibility to make sure that money moves around the globe, and we take that very seriously. And so being able to have fun and laugh together is so very important, laughter is so very important for your own wellness. And so it's important that we provide those opportunities. And, Seema, I agree with you. There's so much opportunity from a gamification perspective. We've seen a lot of success in that with a wellness platform that we leverage at our company, that, it not only helps with your mental health and helps you to learn, resiliency skills, but also to just have fun and compete with your colleagues in a fun way. We even do that in our recognition platform as well. And, every day I get a request for information around how we can gamify other things in our organization, because let's be honest, we are living in a time of TikTok, for example. In 5 seconds, you're swiping. If it doesn't catch your attention and it isn't engaging, people are moving on. So we've had to really think about our strategy in how we are engaging our colleagues in a much more quick, exciting way. And so gamification is something that I'm seeing us implementing in a lot of areas in our organization, and employees find that fun. And that really is especially with certain generations that that's what they're accustomed to. The newer generation that's entering the workforce right now. So fun is so very important. We have a campaign that we're coming up with here in a few weeks called it's International Day of Happiness, and we're just going to be silly and have fun together. And people are excited about being able to do that at work and not taking ourselves so seriously all the time.
Being silly at work. That's fabulous. I think that's really great. Partha, I mean, you've got programs all over the world. Is fun and laughter, is that an important part of products and services today?
Yes, very important. But just one point what Melissa had mentioned about just one thank you message, how it uplifts the whole
Yeah.
day and the week, maybe, right? So this morning I was with a healthcare not provider, healthcare institution. So I was trying to do my sales pitch there, right? And then they're like, no, we are doctors, we're saving lives. How does the thank you help? Okay, I don't care about those thank yous. We have to save lives. I said, show me one person who doesn't like recognition. I'm pretty sure Biden also, if I give a thank you, he will be happier that I gave him a thank you there, right? So it's everyone likes. Okay, you might think you're doing too serious stuff, too much, the financial things or the doctors or something, but even they like that appreciation. That's important. Now, coming to your point about this whole gamification or around wellness or recognition, I think that's coming up more and more, and many of the providers are building it up. For example, in our wellness thing, we have like a walk the 7 wonders of the world. Okay, so you basically start from India, like Taj Mahal, then you go to the Great Wall of China, you go there, get a little bit of trivia from there, just fun. I mean, it's still normal like walking, but it just shows you, okay, you've covered 5,000 steps, so you've covered the journey to Great Wall of China. Then the next step, all that is becoming part of it. And also we are, for example, we're saying that if you do one of the companies, actually one of our clients, what they did was, you walk this many steps, we will contribute to as a part of our CSR activity, we will contribute this amount to some funds and all those things. So people feel a little bit of higher purpose. Those guys who like me, who would not be exercising, they're like, okay, let me just walk, and it's not money going out from my pocket. The company is going to pay something for this, so let me just do my part there. So those are fun elements which are being built into this different kind of products and the platforms, and across vendors. Okay, not just us, like lots of players are doing that.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that you'll do more for someone else than you might do for yourself? Like you say, I don't want to go walk. If I do go walk, though, they're going to contribute to my favorite charity. I mean, I can do that. I can do it for someone else. So, Seema, I want to come back to you on a really important subject that seems to be cropping up more and more and more. And Adrian and I have done a lot of work on this over the last few years. And that's burnout and anxiety in the workplace, which obviously can contribute to quiet quitting and disengagement. So the question I want you to kick off for us is, how do you spot that? When you feel like people are about to quiet quit, they're about to disengage or burn out completely, right? What are some of the things that you look for, and how do you coach your managers up to look for that, the warning signs?
Yeah. We surveyed our team and asked them what they were most engaged on wellness, and because we've done a number of topics, burnout and anxiety came out as number one, and that's true across the globe.
Yep.
If you're taking a look at global surveys, it's not our team is not alone, and we shared that with them. You are not alone. This is what's happening across the globe, and we also have an education for our managers around what to look for. But here's some concrete things that you can look up for. So number one, look for team members whose performance and behavior has changed. You knew them as somebody who would raise their hand for an assignment, or they would engage in dialogue and discussion, always had something to say, but now you're not seeing them put out as much, you're not doing as much. Maybe they're not showing up on camera anymore. They're muting their camera a little bit. Maybe they're not coming to events that you're hosting for fun, engagement events, right? And you're seeing that happen. And if you're having one-on-one conversations, you might be hearing them talk about things like, I'm a little overwhelmed, I'm past due on this deadline, right? Really difficult things. And they're telling you that. Maybe they're telling you a little bit about their home and saying, it's frantic. I don't have time. Those are some of the types of things that you're going to see for people who are starting to get into the anxiety and burnout phase. And particularly in that burnout phase, which is really tough for team members. And what we do encourage our team to do is, number one, have one-on-ones with your team. You make sure you are having conversations regularly with your team to understand where they are. Because the only way you can really know them is to have those conversations. So you have to get to know your team. But I would also say, I think a lot of times we focus on managers, middle managers really having these conversations, but they also need to fill their cups up too. Middle managers are notoriously in difficult positions. So what I say to the team is, don't worry about verticals. Don't worry about hierarchy. If you see someone that's struggling, whether it's me and I'm your team leader or it's my CEO, I want to be able to have that conversation, because at the end of the day, we need to be people first, right? When it comes to anxiety and burnout, you're people first. And then the other pieces later. So I think sometimes people get this wrong, particularly with quiet quitting, and they say, well, let's put more in their MBOs. Let's make it so they're mandatory, have to go on, camera, you mandatory have to show up. And, that's not always the right answer. So you have to be really delicate when you have these conversations and educate your managers on what this looks like.
I so appreciate you talking about middle managers, because, and leaders so often say, I can never have a bad day. I've always got to be the most engaged. I've always got to be upbeat. You giving them permission, and say, hey, we worry about you too, right, is an important message. Well, Melissa, what would you add? We're hearing again this idea of listening, and you're opening up your surveys all year long. What are some of the signs, or what are some of the things you're doing at FIS to help people spot that before they burn out, before it gets critical, right?
Yeah, I have spent, I would say, the last year and a half really, really talking to leaders about this issue. And, we're doing quite a few things to also kind of take some of the burden off of our people managers, right? Because to Seema's point, that role has become incredibly more difficult in this hybrid environment than ever before. So we're really leaning in to help that population, because we are starting to see some shifts in engagement and in that population. And so, one of the things that we're doing is really expanding our mental health first aiders that we have that are available, so that we don't always have to lean into our managers all the time. But we are also spending quite a bit of time educating them and really making mental health training something that is expected and required of our people managers, because employees do look to their managers for help when it comes to their mental health. I see it happen every day. And oftentimes they feel ill-equipped to be able to handle those situations. So we're really leaning into our mental health first aider communities. We're bringing clinicians on site to be able to help and become part of our culture as well. But so much time is being spent, debunking some of the myths that are out there around what burnout is, what it isn't. And how to recognize, some of the things that Seema just mentioned early on, and feeling comfortable having that conversation. I think, I remember before the pandemic, people, how are you doing was a greeting, and now we really need to know, how are you doing? Spend those first few minutes in your one-on-one, getting to know, what's going on in your employee's life. And as employees, we need to be comfortable sharing when, I'm not having a great day. I've got some things going on in my personal life that I'm dealing with, or, I'm struggling with something with one of my children, or whatever it may be. I think we just need to show up in a more real and authentic way, so that we can help one another and help to destigmatize talking about mental health at work. It's okay to say you're not okay. It really is. And we can really help one another when we do that more and more every day, including at work.
So I really appreciate the conversation. I really do. My question for you, though, Melissa, just as a follow up, do you coach your managers that if an employee says, "Hey, I am just overwhelmed. I need today off. I need a mental health day." Is that okay at FIS? Like, do you tell them that's okay?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you asked this. For the last 3 years, actually, at FIS, we have actually given our employees a collective mental health day off each year. Because that's one of the things we hear is, well, if I take the day off, I'm going to miss something. I'm going to fall behind. I'm worried I'm going to miss out on an opportunity that I could have raised my hand for. And so we really listened to employees and said, okay, we are now going to take a collective day off as a company globally so that everyone can really take that day to focus on their own mental health. And that is something that we're really talking to our leaders more and more about. Doing even that outside of that collective day off that people have really come to appreciate. But also giving leaders the ability, like if your team needs a collective day off, to be able to really spend some time focusing on their mental health, do it. You don't need to ask for permission. That is something, and it takes time, right? To be able to do that. Some leaders are more quick to, adapt that practice than others. And so we just have to make sure people know that they're not giving their best work if they're dealing with some sort of crisis in their personal life, or they're just tired, because they just wrapped up that project that they spent a lot of time and effort on. And we need to let them know it's okay. You can take a sick day for more reasons than I have the flu.
Right. So, Partha, I want to get to you and what the trends you're seeing over your wide variety of clients. I want to get to Seema, though, because you were smiling and nodding and say, yeah, we make it okay for you to take a day off. Do you have things like they have at FIS where the collective day off or an extra sick day that's a mental health day? And do you have to classify it as a mental health day or can it just be a day? Right.
It differs depending on the team that you're on, right? So I want to say the team in the distribution centers may be a little bit different, but we have really focused in on, you don't have to say, if you need to take this day, you can say, I need to take this day. And that's really the end of that conversation.
Okay, gotcha.
Like take the day off and you're good. And I encourage I encourage my team to do it. I actually encourage them to do it when I see that they are kind of getting to that burnout stage. And I'll say, just take the day. There's nothing that you need to worry about or cover. I'm here to cover you. Just like you would cover me, take the day. So I do think we're having those conversations. We're actually using data to Partha's point. We're using data to say, how many PTO days are people actually wasting? You would be shocked to see the level of PTO people are wasting. So we're trying to use that data to encourage them. Hey, I see that you're wasting your PTO. Take the days because mental health is a hygiene practice. It's not a one and done. You've got to consistently work on these things. And so taking those days off really matter.
Great. Okay, so Partha, the big finish on this particular question, we've had a lot of conversation. What are you seeing and what are some best practices you can share? And B, have you ever told your staff, Partha, hey, I'm having a rough day, I'm taking the day off? Kind of putting you on the spot here, buddy.
No, so I haven't, and I'm sure my wife keeps on complaining that you need to switch off sometimes, there. So I hope I'll be able to do that, and I'm just not able to switch off. But I was smiling, and when I was just like imagining a situation like Mr. Musk was listening to this conversation. What's he doing in Twitter? Everything. Let's throw away everything what Melissa and Seema is saying. I don't care about anything. Twitter, like the way he's working out Twitter at Twitter. So it's just like trying to imagine what he would be thinking about. But coming to your point, I think one more signal, just to add to Seema and Melissa's points, a signal, what earlier used to be feedback now becomes a complaint, okay, is a very strong signal which we feel. For example, just to give an example there, hey, we need a good coffee machine in the office. It now changes to, we have the worst coffee in the whole world. Okay, there. It's a strong signal. Earlier they used to give me this feedback that, okay, we should improve this, we should improve. Now it's a complaint. Okay, so I see that also as a signal there. But I think in terms of the trends, I think I've already covered that. I mean, I see the HR focusing a lot on this data part. They're continuously measuring, their defining the metrics very clearly. So similar to what I just mentioned about, on the broad trends which we are seeing.
Well, let's keep going on trends, because then this could be an interesting point for the last kind of discussion point here is, where are we going in employee engagement? We haven't even thought about yet. I had a chance to listen to two 25-year-olds or so chatting the other day, and the whole conversation was about AI and how it's going to change their jobs. And they're thinking, and anxiety, of course, they're worrying about the future. Well, in HR, what should we be worrying about in the future with engagement that we haven't even brought up yet? Is there something that we should, thinking 3-5 years down the road, using your crystal ball, Melissa, is there anything that you think might be on the horizon we need to be aware of that we need to start thinking about now?
It's a great question, and it's really hard sometimes to think that far down the road when the world changes. The dynamics change so quickly. So I think about the strategy and the road, the 5-year roadmap I created last year, and I already feel like I have to go and edit it because things keep changing. When you think about some of the things that Partha was talking about early on about what's going on in the world right now. And I think about, the financial crisis and the energy crisis and the war that's taking place. And so it's really sometimes hard to predict what's happening. But I think what is safe to assume is that, there's a shift that's happening, and what employees and what candidates are going to be looking for is going to be different. And we have to find a way to really pivot the way that we operate in every facet and be very innovative and be very agile. And so, I expect that, being able to adapt is going to be a really, really important thing. And I think, we did touch on this a little bit earlier around managers and what we're going to be expecting. When you think about this hybrid environment that we're working in, that's not going to change. The office that we used to go into and the way in which we used to work is changed forever. I truly, truly believe that. And so, we keep trying to think it's either this or that. No, it's not this or that. It's actually that over there. And so how do we find a way to create a culture, regardless of where people are located, regardless of teams working in a variety of different time zones? Like, how do we find that opportunity for us to connect in a meaningful way, regardless of where we're located and what time zone we're in?
I love that idea. Yeah, change is the constant now, and it will be in the future. Can we be more agile, and can we have this human connection, which is not going away? That's one thing. No matter what happens, we need to be more connected to our people than ever before. Seema, what would you add? Where do you think we're going in the future in your job 5 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already in that direction. I agree with what you said and Melissa said about change, and Partha said early on. But I would say there are going to be some, I don't want to call them unintended consequences, but there are going to be things that we haven't thought about as we've moved and shifted into a hybrid remote environment, right? So I think about young folks who are just onboarding, our younger team members who are coming on, who've never had a mentor before, who don't know what the office banter looks like. They've onboarded in a remote environment. Yeah. What are the impacts of that going to look like in 5 years from now in their development and their growth? What compensating techniques will they come up with to handle that? I think all this is new landscape. And so in a way that HR professionals and people professionals have never been before, we are just going to have to be really, really agile, but really, really in tune with the team and what's happening. Because we started a whole new culture. Whether anybody likes it or not, it's not relevant. Yeah. It's a brand new culture, and we've got to be aligned with that and understand that there are going to be impacts from that, and we're going to have to answer those impacts.
That's great. Oh yeah, we're not going back. So we start from where we're at and move forward. Love that. Globally, Partha, what do you think? Where will we go with employee engagement? What are you worrying about in the future here? As I see, we have just a couple minutes left.
So I think I mean, agile, what both Melissa and Seema was saying, I think that's going to be the key. Okay. Google didn't know that ChatGPT is coming. I mean, I'm sure they knew, I mean, they, in a way,
Yeah.
but I couldn't imagine even like 30 days back that someone could actually become a threat to Google.
Yeah.
Okay. They're like dominating, they're like the superpowers everywhere. But suddenly they have to, as Satya Nadella said, like, we brought them out to dance now. You know, so I think that we don't know what skills are going to be required in 3 years, 5 years. Earlier, when I was in my studies, when I was doing studies, okay, I wanted to do engineering. Okay, that's where the career is. Computer science, that's what you do because 10 years down the line you will need it. Here we don't know in 3 years what skills are going to be required there. So the agility is the most important. The learnability, the adaptability has to be there, and I think the only way to create that is like having enough knowledge about different areas, so that you can make the switch accordingly and constantly be learning about new things, and it not be like specific things. You can always learn, take up history, just build up your knowledge around different subjects. You don't know which will be useful down the line. And just 3 years, I don't know. I'm worried about my children. Like, what should I guide them? What should they study?
Right.
I don't know. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're in the lightning round. We like to end at about 10 minutes to the hour because that's when everybody gets ready for the next meeting anyway. So we've got 3 minutes and 10 seconds to go. Seema, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Partha and Melissa. If there was one thing you wanted people to take away from our conversation today, or one thing that you learned from our conversation today, what is that one thing, Seema?
I think you be compassionate with your team. This is a tremendously difficult time. And so really, really do that. And then everybody said it. So I will say data and listening, listen to your team, see the data, and then act on it. I think that's one thread that a lot of people forget. The last part, act on it. So I would definitely take that away.
Excellent. Partha.
You're not alone. A lot of people around the world is facing similar issues around disengagement, and tired and exhausted. So there are lots of people out there. So it's okay to be not okay. What Melissa has just taken from her point, I think that's my takeaway.
Such an important point, I think. Yeah. And Melissa, big finish, no pressure.
Yes, I think, just like when you get on an airplane, they go through the emergency procedures. You've got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help anyone else. We hear that, but I always see us doing that. So it's okay to be selfish about prioritizing your own mental health and well-being. And it's okay to say it's not okay, and to be able to really role model that behavior at your organization and be selfish in prioritizing your own well-being so that you can be of service to the rest of the organization and your family and friends.
Such great advice. I love that. Be compassionate, get the data, listen, and then do something about it. Don't be afraid. You are not alone, and take care of yourself first. Well, listen, this has been such a great discussion. Thank you so much for your time. Seema Bensali from Henry Schein. Love that. Live and in color from Long Island, as we say in the New York area. Partha Nayag from Vantage Circle. Thank you so much for putting this panel together and sponsoring this. Look up Vantage Circle. They got wonderful tools to do many of the things that we talked about today. And Melissa Anderson from FIS. Thank you for your wisdom, your time, and your input. And I always say, Adrian, you've got the last word. How would you wrap this up?
I never get the last word. Come on. But hey, I appreciate it. Appreciate so much, Seema, Partha, Melissa, for joining us today, and for all of you for joining us. This has been such a great reminder to me. I'm taking away pages of notes from our panel today. Great ideas. If you haven't listened to this, dig back in and take notes, because there were some great takeaways. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we wish you the best of luck in creating an engaged environment in your culture. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thanks.